Hi, everyone. Am I coming through? I'm Susan Leslie, and I am the Congregational Advocacy and Witness Director at the Unitarian Universalist Association, and I serve on the IOI Steering Committee. I'm one of the co-chairs this year and help plan this meeting. And one of the things I've learned that I've been saying for the past few years as I've gone to various of the national network trainings is mass detention and deportation for immigrants, mass incarceration for African Americans and people of color, austerity as the economic prescription to our systemic woes, and a clamp down on democracy. Pretty bleak, right? That's what we're up against. And the remedy is in this room. The remedy is strong, faith-based community organizing at the local, state, and national level, pulling together. And what we're going to be doing here this weekend is looking at where we can increase it, grow it, because that is our salvation. So I want to name who is in this room and the power that's in this room. I first want to point out who the IOI Steering Committee are, both current and recent. Folks, you've met April Johnson already and Kathy Partridge. Reverend Charles Mock helped plan this. He's from the National Baptist Convention and couldn't be here tonight, but he's got colleagues here. Reverend Sue Ang, who you've met from the Lutherans. Reverend Michael Ray Matthews from PICO, if you'd stand. Reverend John Ashbury from DART. Anna Garcia Ashley from Gamaliel. Kenneth Galdston from Intervalley Project. Another person not here, Stephen Newcomb from Unity Seminary, and also Dr. Shanta, I'm going to kill his name, Premawardahana. Shanta made it! Yay! You're in the house. Great. From the Seminary Consortium for Urban and Pastoral Education. Dr. Iva Carruthers from Samuel DeWitt Proctor Foundation. Gary Sandusky, who you've met. And I just want to name that we are here as Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and Unitarian Universalist faith, and lots of community partners. Also in the room, we have, and I'll just ask you to raise your hands now for this piece, and some of you will be raising your hands multiple times. We have clergy. We have national network leaders. We have denominational staff. We have academics and theologians. We have partner groups, many led by formerly incarcerated people. We have state networks. We have leaders of congregation-based community organizations. Have I left anyone out? We have funders. Thank you. And look around. And look around. We have the beloved community right here in this room. So speaking of funders, I have the great privilege to introduce Reverend Dr. Brad Braxton, who is the Program Officer for Religion in the Public Sphere at the Ford Foundation in New York, New York. And he's going to come up here and give us an opening reflection. And I'm going to keep introducing you as you make your way up, Brad. As a grant maker, he seeks to enhance the capacity of faith communities to foster enduring social transformation. His grant making also strives to amplify courageous, creative, and compassionate faith-based voices engaging the public sphere for the common good. In addition to his work at the Ford Foundation, Dr. Braxton also is the founding senior pastor of the Open Church, a culturally inclusive congregation in Baltimore, Maryland, committed to social justice activism and interfaith collaboration. His regular commuting between New York City and Baltimore reflects his passionate commitment to being a foundation officer, pastor, scholar, and social activist. Please join me in welcoming Brad.
Good evening. On behalf of the president of the Ford Foundation, Mr. Darren Walker, and all of my Ford colleagues, I bring you greetings. For decades, the Ford Foundation has supported visionaries on the front line of social change worldwide. So it is fitting for Ford to be here, bearing witness because that is who you are, visionaries on the front line of social change worldwide. I am grateful to IOI for the invitation to be here, and especially grateful to my sister in the struggle, Charlene Sinclair, scholar and community organizer extraordinaire, for her invitation. For me to offer framing comments for our probing conversations about criminalization and race. Permit me to take a liberty as a clergy person and briefly read from a sacred text. I call to our attention a few verses from the New Testament text, the letter of James. Listen to these verses from the 2nd chapter. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but do not have works? Can faith save you? If a brother or sister is naked and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, "Go in peace, keep warm, and eat your fill," and yet you do not supply their bodily needs, what is the good of that? So faith by itself, if it has no works, is dead. I have entitled my reflections, "Finding Faith a Job." I am a preacher. Y'all don't encourage that too much now, you know. The first decade of the 21st century began and ended in violence. In 2001, religious fanatics steered planes into government buildings, forcing the Twin Towers on Wall Street to crumble. Starting around 2008, financial fanatics on Wall Street steered monetary products away from government regulation, forcing bank accounts on Main Street to crumble. In recent years, financial markets have experienced their greatest crisis since the Great Depression. Thus, experts have coined a term for our current financial woes, the Great Repression. The market meltdown created a credit crisis. Banks collapsed, mortgages were hard to get, and the auto industry nearly ran out of gas. Thankfully, economic forecasts indicate that the worst is perhaps behind us. Nevertheless, persistent unemployment remains the most stubborn feature of the Great Repression. Many of us know someone currently out of work. It is demoralizing to want work and not be able to find it. So during this employment crisis, faith communities should preach hope, since hope is the great antidote to futility and fatality. Peter Gomes, the late renowned preacher at Harvard University, once insisted, "Hope doesn't get us out, but it does get us through." Even as we wait for the government to enact more sweeping employment legislation, faith communities should have a hope-filled employment agenda. Since faith communities should play an active role in reversing unemployment, I, as a religious leader, watched a recent television broadcast with great interest. CNN did an extended series on joblessness. the newscaster Soledad O'Brien visited a job fair in Chicago, sponsored by the local Chamber of Commerce. She interviewed business leaders, scholars, and various unemployed persons who were present to get jobs. The most riveting interview involved an unemployed person named Faith. This is a true story. Here is the transcript of Soledad's interview with Faith. Please tell me your name. My name is Faith. Faith, why are you at this job fair? I am here because I am out of work. Why are you unemployed? I am out of work because I refuse to get my hands dirty. Faith, what did you do on your last job? Not much. I did what I always do, believe, and that was it. I believe in God. I believe in the great prophets. I believe in the sacred scriptures of the world's religious traditions. Faith, did you do anything else but believe? Well, sorta. I went to religious services on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I never missed the Tuesday missionary meeting and the Wednesday scripture study. And I always attended the religious conventions and convenings. At the conventions, the singing is sweet, the speeches are powerful, and Soledad, the banquet dinners are off the chain. After all those religious festivities, I'm so tired that I need to go home and rest. And that's been my problem. When I'm really needed to do some serious work, I am absent without leave. So I came to this job fair praying that somebody can teach me how to keep a job. Because if I don't find work, I will die. Soledad concluded the interview with these words. We hope that someone can find Faith a job. There is a moral imperative upon faith communities to put faith back to work. Too many faith communities are filled with unemployed faith, faith that ain't working. Faith singing sweet hymns while the world goes to hell. Faith fussing about congregational bylaws while teenagers are shot in alleys, driveways, and schoolyards. Faith that is willing to get its hands dirty to help the millions of people in our country who are languishing in jails and prisons. God is not pleased with unemployed faith. Did you hear the text? So by itself, faith is dead if it has no works. James, the New Testament's primary practical theologian, is abundantly clear. When faith is at its best, it should be in the business of concrete deeds, not just abstract creeds. In chapter 2, James corrects a misunderstanding about justification by faith. Hallelujah. Faith is supposed to be employed in acts of righteousness and love. However, some first century CE religionists were living as if all they had to do was believe. This era sounds like the ancient version of our contemporary name it and claim it foolishness. Justification by faith is not a justification for inactivity. Faith is supposed to work. As religious leaders, as organizers, as activists, we must find faith. a job. If faith communities want an employment agenda, James chapter 2 is a job posting, advertising the work that should occupy our faith. And let me give this framing comment, as difficult as it may be for us to receive. Our conversations today and tomorrow about mass incarceration and issues of race are vitally important. Yet I want to hazard the hunch that they, of course, are but symptoms of a much deeper pathology. What's underneath so much of the social pathology in our nation and world is fundamentalism. A fundamentalism that obscures the beauty of diversity. When I talk about fundamentalism, I'm not talking about any particular religious community. Rather, I mean an overall approach to reality that transforms culturally conditioned criteria for truth and relevance into universal criteria. Furthermore, fundamentalism vigorously and sometimes violently compels acceptance of those criteria. I was in a phone conversation a few days ago at my office in the Ford Foundation with a nationwide organization doing great work in social justice and particularly in the area of mass incarceration. And I shared this observation with those committed colleagues. If by some stroke of grace, if by some grit on our part, the mass incarceration crisis were to end next year, there would still be a fundamental pathology in the United States. And I do not mean to be impolite, but let me name it. It is the fundamentalism of white privilege and racism. It is that fundamentalism that says some bodies matter than other bodies. White bodies matter more than brown bodies. Able bodies matter more than those with special capacities. And the list goes on and on and on. So as important as these conversations are, there are still some root issues that we must deal with, because as a scholar, pastor, activist, and now grant maker, it is amazing, absolutely amazing, that some of the worst behaviors actually exist among left-leaning social justice organizations who project one thing in their public witness, but in their own interior promote some of the most sordid oppression in their own hiring practices and wage structures. I knew I wasn't going to get no help on that one. And so part of fundamentalism is that deep analysis that allows us to say, physicians, heal thyself. So get it straight, don't get it twisted. The conversation you're engaging in is a timely and important one, but it may just be the symptom of a deeper malady coursing through the veins of the body politic. As I say now often at Ford, one of the things you must do is not only to focus on policy. Tell my colleagues this all the time. We need policy, and we also need poetry. We need organizers, and we also need singers who can not only elevate our minds, but also elevate our spirits. And that's what the conversation about fundamentalism will do. It will get us down to some root issues about the poetry that really understands that the word all means all. I typically don't pay much attention to my cell phone, especially when giving public addresses, but my phone was beeping even as I was talking. I hope you don't mind if I share with you the most recent text that I just received. As I was speaking, a news flash came across my phone. jobs available immediately, no application necessary or background check required, long hours but heavenly compensation. Somebody get out of here and tell Faith that there is plenty of work to do. And once Faith starts working, if Faith gets tired, Faith can do what religious people have always done: sing while Faith works. As Faith fights fundamentalism, a fundamentalism that places entire people groups and nations in chains, the road will be rough and the going will be tough. And sometimes the hills will be hard to climb. But as Faith climbs high mountains, tell Faith to sing that old work song. Lord, I keep so busy working for the kingdom. Keep so busy working for the kingdom. Keep so busy working for the kingdom, ain't got time to die. Because when I'm healing the sick, when I'm feeding the poor, when I'm liberating oppressed people, I ain't got time to die.